Huge protests now have swept the Netherlands as Dutch farmers resist new net zero laws that would limit livestock and fertiliser use in a bid to cut carbon emissions, right? So it's going to financially ruin them, basically. Thousands of farmers have used their tractors to block supermarkets, roads and airports in demonstrations across the country, some of which have turned violent. The protesters say that new laws would threaten their livelihoods and global food production, forcing many farms to downsize or go out of business. Supermarket shelves remain sparse as the Dutch farmers clutch protest signs emblazoned with the message, no farmers, no food. And if you're listening on radio right now, we've just shown a footage of that. Basically, it's a motorway in Holland, essentially, with a load of people in tractors protesting. And joining me right now is someone who's been part of these protests, and it's dairy farmer Jeroen Van Maanen, whose name I apologise, I've probably just butchered, I'm afraid, but there we are, of the Dutch Dairy Farmers Association, joining me now from Zeewolde in the Netherlands, and he's been protesting against the policy. Look, thank you very, very much for joining me, and apologies about your name, right? But talk to me about what's going on, all right? What's happening with you? Why are you so livid?
Well, Dutch government made some plans last years, actually. The protests have been going in Holland for already 2.5 years. And 1 month ago, they made some plans. They divided Holland in a few different regions. And it's all about cutting our nitrogen emissions back. But some of the regions, they want to have to cut it back 12%, 46%, 75% or 95%. And techniques or innovations are not allowed, so the only way to do it is to cut back the number of your herd, and actually it will cut back the percentage of your income also. So lots of farmers in Holland fear for the future.
But what I don't understand, and what a lot of people we're going to bring in very shortly, by the way, just sitting next to me now, is our kind of resident net zero expert, Andy Mayer from the Institute of Economic Affairs, who's all over this. So we'll get his view on a more international perspective on this very, very shortly. But in terms of what's going on in the Netherlands right now, does it feel like your government is willing to essentially sacrifice you and your livelihood, the beating heart of the nation, the people who keep the nation fed and watered, in this ridiculous pursuit of some kind of big green agenda that probably no one's ever voted on?
Yes, that's true. It's very much true. You know, they want to get rid of farms to make some nature land and also build houses. Houses which we don't need for Dutch people, because a normal Dutch couple would get 1.8 or 1.9 children. But they're building them for the refugees, you know. 100,000 people are immigrating to Holland every year. So it makes up for about 1 million in 10 years' time. And that's what I want to do, build 1 million houses.
Well, we're having something similar over here, and as well, tomorrow I'm actually going off to a refugee hotel, or I suppose an illegal immigrant hotel, one may say. And it's really interesting, actually, to hear that what's happening over where you are, because you paint a very similar picture to the concerns that a lot of people over here have. And it is really that thing of, we have a lot of things in common. Just because Britain voted to leave the European Union, we didn't vote to leave Europe. You are still our brothers and sisters, right? And we share some very, very common issues, right? There's the migrant crisis, there's the net zero crisis, and the fact that sometimes we're being led by donkeys. But just quickly, how are you going to progress with this protest? So what's the end game here? Are you just going to try and bring the country to its knees to make a point?
Yeah, probably. There is no end. Farmers will fight for their future and for their families and for the farms, and also for food on the table for the citizens. So there is no end.
Right, and just on some, just very quickly, sorry about this, but I just want to get you on this. We've been told a bit about some of these protests turning violent. Is that true, or is that just media guff?
Yeah, most of it is media. 99% of the protests are still pretty friendly, you know. So okay. The rest of it is media and trying to make the support from the people less. Okay. But it's not working. The support from people is massive.
Well, look, you know, we've got a group of people here who basically are saying enough is enough, ladies and gentlemen. And these people, how can you possibly disagree with someone who goes, our government is about to take food out of my children's mouths, take my livelihood away, and I'm going to get in my tractor and I'm going to do something about it. I say all power to you. Jeroen Van Maanen there. I'll talk to you again very soon, my good man. Thank you very much. Right, now, without any further dither and delay, we've got Andy Mayer here. He's a friend of the channel. He's brilliant. He's the one and only. And he's been basically our kind of resident net zero expert. You've cut through the noise, Andy. Just talk to me a bit about the bigger picture here then. So the Dutch have kicked off, but this is a global issue, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a global issue that's going to hit Europe first and foremost. And it's so much worse than the way it was just portrayed. I mean,
Right.
when I was reading up on this stuff, I was thinking, no, it's got to be an exaggeration. No government's clearly trying to put out half their farmers out of business. But that's exactly what the Dutch government is trying to do. They have gone completely mad. There is an environmental issue here, just to be clear, why they're doing this, which is all about nitrogen, NOx emissions. It's not quite the same thing as net zero, but it's all linked to the same sort of environmental strategy. And what they want to do is get those emissions down. But the way they're going about it is they've simply taken a UN direction that have then been translated into an EU law that has then been translated into a set of yearly emissions that hit Holland most because they export the most from agriculture.
Right. Do you think that the people in charge really believe in this environmental cause? Because, or do you think they're just doing it? Because it's really weird from where I'm sitting. Really weird that clearly they're happy to put a lot of their own citizens out of business, cost a lot of people a lot of money, must inconvenience people for the pursuit of the... Do they really think the world's going to end?
It's not that they think the world's going to end, but they think it matters. And they've got this equivalent to net zero trap where they're so obsessed with the target, they're making terrible decisions. Because the environmental impact from some of these things is uncertain. There's been a big Royal Society report on this in the UK, where they estimated the impact of the similar emissions was about £700 million a year. Now, the Dutch agriculture industry is one of the biggest in the world. It's exporting about 100 billion every year. And that's a trade-off. And they're going to destroy all of that. And it won't actually make much difference to global emissions
isn't it?
Because they'll just offshore it. Other people elsewhere will be producing the cattle that have been killed in Holland to satisfy this net zero goal.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? It's one of those things that is, weirdly, the net zero stuff is what arguably a lot of vegans are behind as well, and now we've got cattle being slaughtered. But just lastly, Andy, I mean, this is going to kick off, I would have thought, throughout the world, frankly. But do you think there's a lack of faith in humanity here? The idea that we are not capable of coming up, without maybe necessarily making too many changes, right? We're not capable of coming up with a solution to this environmental crisis ourselves. We've got to make loads of changes now. Do you not think that human beings are going to sort this out? We're going to come up with something?
Well, the Dutch know that they can because the Dutch farmers reduced their emissions by about 60% over the last 2 years. And their reward for that is for the government to turn around and say, not good enough, despite there being very little evidence that it's only the agricultural sector that's causing the problem. They're just taking the brunt of it because they think they can. It's 2% of the population. They think they're a soft target. Well, they've clearly proven they're not a soft target. And you can expect those protests to start spreading into other countries that are facing similar emission limits, unless their governments wise up and take, as you say, a more pragmatic approach and believe in people to invent the solutions.
Andy, you're an absolute legend. Thank you very much, my good man. Andy May, that, of course, of the IEA. When Andy talks about net zero and about the environment, you better listen because he's always right. Andy May, thank you very, very much.